Is Moros a real dinosaur? The answer is yes, and not only is it a real dinosaur, but it's a real important dinosaur if you like tyrannosaurs. Hang out with us as we discuss what Moros is and what makes it so interesting, despite the fact that it's only literally a footful of bones. Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Curtis, one of the paleontologists here at Fossil Crates, and today we're here to talk about more on Moros. The name Moros, according to the authors that described the paper, which is Zano et al., 5 other authors, 6 total in 2019, described Moros meaning the embodiment of impending doom, in reference to the establishment of the Cretaceous Tyrannosauroid lineage in North America. Wow. The species name Intrepidus was selected thanks to, and I quote, the hypothesized intercontinental dispersal of tyrannosaurs during this interval. What they're getting at is Moros was small, and from giant beasts of doom in the late Cretaceous comes an ancestor that was about, say, 12 feet long on the high side, maybe 200 pounds. So from great things came small packages. The species name Intrepidus is referring to the fact that in their analysis they believe that these came from Asia, that Moros' close cousins had made a long voyage by land across a bridge from Asia all the way down into the parts of Utah. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual bones. What you're looking at is the entirety of the bones said to belong to Moros. The paper has a great illustration and some wonderful artwork, but if you look closely, you'll see they assign 2 teeth and only part of a lower leg. Each of the teeth was found at a separate locality from one another, and both of the teeth were found somewhere different than the associated leg bones. And for the most part, the hind limb is shafts. It has a shaft of a femur, a tibia, and a 4th metatarsal. There's a good 2nd metatarsal, and 2 what we call pedal phalanges, little toe bones of the 4th toe. Now the holotype, which is NCSM 33392, it came from a place called NC Paleo UT05, which was nicknamed the Stormy Theropod site. And that's where the bones were found. One of the teeth, the specimen labeled NCSM 33393, comes from a site called NC Paleo UT11, which was nicknamed Suicide Hill. And the other tooth, which was not figured in the paper nor in the supplementary portion, it's kind of surprised me, is NCSM 33276, and it came from the place called NC Paleo UT18, which was dubbed the Cliffs of Insanity microsite. Now these sites are some distance from one another, both geographically and temporally, so we know the teeth did not go to the same individual as the bones, nor did the teeth come out of the same mouth as the same animal. So you're looking at a minimum of 3 individuals here. All of the bones do seem to belong to a Tyrannosauroid. Whether or not they all go to Moros, or if the teeth belong to some other kind of small Tyrannosauroid that was running around at the time, we don't know. I suspect they lumped them all into Moros to make sure they didn't have to create a separate genus from a single tooth. I'm looking at you, Troodon, and a number of other dinosaurs. Interestingly, the Cliffs of Insanity microsite had a separate paper out on it before Moros was named, and they had found a beautiful Tyrannosaurid tooth, which they just called Tyrannosaurid in the illustration. From that site have been hundreds of crocodilomorph teeth, turtle shell fragments, an amphibian jaw, plus fish teeth and scales. Even eggshell fragments and 2 mammal teeth, most likely a multituberculote of some sort, have been discovered. Dinosaur-wise, at least 4 dromaeosaur teeth, some ankylosaur, ornithopod, and hadrosauromorph teeth have been discovered as well. Looking at the teeth, they do have an overall similarity to one another. However, one has a deep groove that the other is lacking. And this groove is said to be autapomorphic for Moros, meaning it belongs to Moros. It's a unique feature. The trouble I have with this is if I find a Tyrannosaurid tooth from, say, a younger individual, will it have the groove? The other tooth doesn't have the groove. How will I know it's a Moros tooth if it doesn't have the groove? Or is the groove an anomaly? Was it something that happened, it bit into a bone somehow wrong? It's maddening when we have such small sample size. I can't blame the authors. They did their best, but it drives me crazy. And this is just what you get used to in the world of paleontology, of the dinosaur persuasion. They wrote, and I quote, "To assess the terminal age, relative growth rate, and ontogenetic state of NCSM 33393, we processed histological ground sections from mid-diapophyseal fragments of the tibia and femur." They also wrote, "Proportions of the zygopod to stylopod of NCMS 33393 are most similar to those of North American ornithomimids." The part that caught my eye was NCSM 33393 in the paper is listed as a referred tooth from NC Paleo UT11 Suicide Hill. I believe the authors meant that they did the work on the bones of NCSM 33392 and that this is simply a typo. The perplexing thing is how this snuck past not only all 6 authors, but 3 reviewers. Not sure how that happens because it's pretty important to get the specimen numbers correct. What they're talking about, though, regardless of the specimen number used, is that they cut the leg bones open for a histological analysis. And what that does is it looks at the bone makeup. And if you're lucky, you can determine how old the animal was when it died. The animal was a subadult, and it died around 7 years of age, which is pretty cool to know that you can now compare the size of the animal at death and what the bone looked like inside to other tyrannosaurids that have had this done to. And to the authors, the bone indicated that this particular individual's growth was already slowing down, that it was nearing maximum size. They actually compare it to Guanlong, a late Jurassic Tyrannosauroid from Asia. And it was also 7 years old when it died, based on a similar analysis. And it was also of similar size. Now, what's cool is we've done a lot of histological work on more recent tyrannosaurs, like the Tyrannosaurines. Think Gorgosaurus, Albertosaurus, Tyrannosaurus rex proper. And what's fascinating is a Gorgosaurus at age 7 is not only 3 times as massive, but it's about to enter a growth spurt. So the big Tyrannosaurs in the late Cretaceous, when you think Tyrannosaur, you think T-Rex. They have this massive growth spurt that makes them grow even larger. But even the little ones were much larger than this Moros. Moros, as preserved, is guesstimated to top out around 200 pounds, and it might reach 12 feet long. A full adult would have kept growing, like most dinosaurs. They just keep growing. They just slow down their growth. So it wouldn't have been much bigger. Yes, this animal's around 97 million years old based on the latest dates of the formation that it came out of. And at that time, Tyrannosauroids were small. Moros is tiny. Suskityrannus, which is a little bit younger, but not much, is also very small. 3-4 feet long, maybe 6 feet on a really big individual. 150 pounds tops. That's why they call it the coyote tyrant, because of its size. So we know that these tyrannosauroids in the Cretaceous, the early part of the Cretaceous, were small. They were subservient predators. They were running around in the shadows of large beasts. I mean, think about Utah raptor. It was 20 feet long. And you have Siach. You have other animals like Carcharodontosaurus, like Acrocanthosaurus. You have these giant theropods that are stomping about. And the Tyrannosaurids, they were the little dinosaur on campus. One other item I noted while looking at the illustrations, and it shows how hard it is to write a really good scientific paper, to have it come off pristine, is if you look in the supplementary methods section, in Supplementary Methods 2, they have an image, Figure 2, called Supplementary Figure 2, of an isolated Tyrannosauroid premaxilla tooth. And it's our friend NCSM 33393. Figure E is labeled Lingual View, and Figure G is labeled Lingual View. I believe Figure E should be considered the labial view, and you can contrast that with this picture of NCSM 333276, which appeared in another paper by Avrahami et al. In 2018. And here you can see the difference in the lingual and the labial view. Small, minor error, but I saw a couple other typos in the paper as well. It really did surprise me. Hey, I've written papers and I'm guilty of specimen numbers as well. It happens to the best of us. Nowhere in the paper do they mention feathers. There's no indication of quill knobs on the legs, not that we'd expect any. And yet, I'm sure Moros is going to be shown with feathers all over the place. Typically, to invoke feathers, they're going to bring up phylogenetic bracketing. That's always the justification for feathers, and I'm not saying it's erroneous to use it as such, especially with tyrannosaurids. How would you bracket it? You need an ancestor, and you need something that is more recent to have feathers. Tyrannosaurus comes to mind, as does Dilong. But when you look at Tyrannosaurus, it's a proceratosauroid, and the Tyrannosaurus specimen is on the basal branch of the Tyrannosaurid tree, as is Dilong. So you know that there's at least 2 ancestral Tyrannosauroids, not closely related to Moros, that appear to have feathers. But are they feathers? Are they proto-feathers? Are they filaments? What are they? It's unclear. But when you look at the other side of the bracket, because you need to have something on the other end to make it to be bracketed, to my knowledge, we don't have any feather evidence for Gorgosaurus, Albertosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, and your more derived Tyrannosaurians. We have patches of skin from a number of these individuals, and all of them come up with pebbly scaled skin. Now, admittedly, we don't have a mummy yet, someday, and I'll wager a Fossil Crates cast that when one mummy does appear, it won't have feathers. Now, the corollary is negative evidence. Hey, just because we haven't found the feathers doesn't mean it didn't have them. It's very hard to preserve. Perhaps it had them on the midline. Maybe it had them as juveniles. But the other side is perhaps they never had feathers. Perhaps the line of Tyrannosaurus and Dilong had feathers, but an ancestor that split off from them that led to the what I'll call modern Tyrannosaurs, at least Western North America Tyrannosaurs, did not have them. So they'll never have feathers, and we'll never find them with feathers. One of the great things with paleo is we get to keep searching and looking and hypothesizing, and we get wonderfully evocative art that comes from it. So feathers, no feathers, it's always fun to talk about and debate. One of the neat things about Moros' foot is you can tell right away that this thing was fleet of foot. It was fast. It's more reminiscent in ways of the ornithomimids in how the limb is so gracile. It is quick. Also fascinating is the similarity of the morphology of the foot to some of the Asian tyrannosauroids. So it seems that they crossed a land bridge to get all the way down to Utah around 97 million years ago. But what's interesting to me and to the researchers at large is that but 80 million years, 17 million years fast forward, you have these giant tyrannosaurids running around. So the ancestor was small and they lived in the shadow of much bigger beasts. But what changed? Well, likely the climate changed, you had some kind of environmental impact, prey changed, and these animals that were feeding on these, that were keeping the tyrannosaurids small, they went extinct. And the tyrannosaurids, like Moros, took full advantage of that extinction and exploded in size and became the dominant predators in North America. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation about Moros, and I'm curious to see how Moros is handled in Jurassic World Dominion. I'm guessing it's going to be a feathery, cute, small Tyrannosaurid, and I'm thinking that it's going to be quite popular. That's my prediction, but here it is, 5/20/2022. Countdown's coming. The movie's going to be here too. Again, I am Dr. Brian Curtis with Fossil Crates. Please check out fossilcrates.com to get all of your fossil cast needs, from complete T-Rex skull, dinosaurs you may not have heard of. Please also check out our socials, like and subscribe to the page, and keep your eyes open for our next video. Thank you kindly. Adios.